All right, welcome to Wine and Witches. Here's a secret. I've been a witch drinking wine for like 2 hours already. So there's that. I'm also going to turn my background off because I got to get out of my work clothes, you know?
Yeah, I'm like not in work mode anymore.
I wish I could let you all taste some of these Halloween cookies that we made in honor of the occasion, but you probably wouldn't want to because we ran out of vanilla and made them with lemon instead. So they're not that good, to be honest.
That sounds like a really strange substitute.
Lemon is not a Halloween flavor.
Yeah, we didn't have any other flavoring, and then that was what we went with. So listen, I know we're like 45 minutes behind when people who thought that they were going to be just like cruising in for 10 minutes are going to be trying to go to sleep. So we didn't really have anything super specific, structured, planned here. Alex, should I like go through the slides or just share?
Yeah, well, okay. So first, people were asking like, what is this about and why are we doing this? So
yes, excellent.
I gave a little bit of an overview, but I wanted to wait for you.
No, that's great. And some of the slides actually address that. So maybe I'll just share while we talk. Oh, wait, sorry. Do you mind making me able to share?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let me find you. I want to make you a co-host.
Thanks. So basically we're getting tired of the patriarchy just like breathing down our neck all the time, right? And Alex and I were talking about science communication on a call once and just kind of like drinking and relaxing as we do on our work calls. And it kind of came up that we were like, you know, everyone like this like whole rise of like spiritualism or whatever is kind of making a comeback. But actually, when you look at what witches did historically, it was empirical medicine, pretty much. I mean, there was a lot of superstition baked in, but nurses and midwives have a really bad rap. And actually, there was a pamphlet that turned into a book.
I have it. This book is
on the very subject that, so here, I'll skip ahead to that.
Yep.
So first of all, witches are like a thing. Did you guys know that in 2018, the New Yorker did like a cover spread of all kinds of women who actually, and people generally who identify as witches? Just a fun fact for your day. But okay, so this was a pamphlet that went out in like the 70s. Barbara Ehrenreich and Deirdre English did a lot of research on what was going on with female like stereotypes in medicine. And they came upon a theme, which was basically around the time that the church started sanctioning doctors, traditional healers got demoted and totally ostracized. And there was a smear campaign against folk remedies and medicine because they wanted to sort of have a monopoly on healing within the church. And I apologize, this is getting political, but it was a long ago church with different leaders. So some of these themes, I'm just going to let this one hang out here on the screen. If your English is your second or third or fourth language, I'll read aloud some of the, actually, maybe we could have a volunteer who wants to read aloud one or two of these little passages. You can just unmute yourself and start.
I can read one.
Go ahead.
Okay. Witches, Nurses, and Midwives, A History of Women Healers, 1973 by Barbara Ehrenreich and Deirdre English. We are told that women have been so trapped by the cycles of menstruation and reproduction that they have never been free and creative agents outside their homes. Another myth fostered by conventional medical histories is that male professionals won out the strength of their superior technology. According to these accounts, male science more or less automatically replaced female superstition, which from then on was called old wives' tales.
Anyone else want to pick up where Eloise left off?
I'll go. But history belies these theories. Women have been autonomous healers, often the only healers for women and the poor. And we found in the periods we have studied that if anything, It was the male professionals who clung to untested doctrine, yeah, and ritualistic practices, and it was the women healers who represented a more humane, empirical approach to healing.
So that was a lot that we kind of pulled out for you guys, but the crux of it, I think, that comes through is, yeah, as soon as you think of the word witch, you sort of think of like Hamlet or some like crackpot cooking in a cauldron, or Halloween. And actually the history behind all these superstitions. I mean, you know, there's a word for witch in almost every language, and usually it is to do with midwifery or healing. So we were just kind of trying to unpack where this like weird negative stereotype came from. And this slide deck is available for you guys in the participant drive. So we're not going to like hover on every single thing, but just some historical women healers from around the world. Trota of Salerno was one that I thought was cool because she was actually in her time, like people thought she was a witch, but also called to her from all over Europe because her healing remedies worked. And then just to bring it full circle, if anyone was in the SciComms panels today, there were some amazing ones, but two quotes really spoke to us. So one was from Sarah Lasso, who did her presentation on self-hacking, how women and girls should know their own bodies and should sort of biohack a little bit around themselves. And she pulled out a quote that really resonated with a lot of the women, I think, in the room, and maybe it resonates with all of you. When girls start their first period, many medical professionals think girls will begin their sex life and need to be medicated. These girls do not know how their body works without hormone pills. I don't want to do a show of hands, but just like let that sink in for a minute. How many people in this Zoom room community have had an experience like that or know someone who is experiencing that? That's like a crazy thing to like, we've been biohacking already sort of on ourselves. And then Abe and Mayank were talking about recognizing indigenous forms of knowledge in their makerspace setting. And one thing that they came across a lot was Ayurvedic teaching. So an ancient Sanskrit form, or I don't even know if Sanskrit's the right term, but a Vedic form of healing that is like 5,000 years old and rooted in herbal medication. And Western biomedicine doesn't really say much about Ayurvedic techniques, even though there is actually a lot of empirical evidence behind some of them. So these were just some of the thoughts that kind of pulled us together. And then there's some news articles in here about like what's going on with witches in the world today. So yeah, that was our food for thought. We really just thought it would be cool to get a bunch of like-minded people from BioSummit in one place, get us a little bit juiced up and start having conversation.
Thank you, Amanda. Like that was great. Amanda like put those slides together and she asked me if I wanted to add anything or change anything, and I was like, no. Because I think that was a really good sort of like roundup of what we were talking about when we first had this conversation. And I was in the middle of reading this book at the time, and I wanted to read this one passage from this book that I think maybe while we're all reading aloud, I think gets to the heart of this whole concept that we have totally been talking about this whole time and at other biosummits about how, you know, communities and individuals and knowledge that exists outside of the mainstream and outside of the ivory towers and outside of establishment, medicine, and science is often looked down upon as untrustworthy or hackery. And it has this very negative connotation. And that is hundreds of years old, actually. And it's very unfortunate, but I just wanted to read this one little line. So great was the witch's knowledge that in 1527, Paracelsus, considered the father of modern medicine, burned his text on pharmaceuticals, confessing that, quote, he had learned from the sorceress all he knew. And so the guy who gets credited for like being the father of pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical technology learned what he knew from a woman who then he called a sorceress and burned all her knowledge. And I just think that is just it. That's just it. And that's been happening for so long. So with that, we'll just open up the floor for any comments, or I think everyone can unmute. If not, let me know.
Can I this is, kind of personal, but like I just gave birth and I had a midwife and I had a home birth.
Woo!
Yes,
everything
good for you.
Was perfect. And I highly recommend. So I'm really excited that you guys are all talking about this. And yeah, like I haven't had to leave my house. I would not have wanted to ever get in a car during labor.
Yeah.
The midwife, it's birth till death. Like she's not leaving me. Like an OB will just come in and deliver your baby and leave, but like the midwife is there my whole life. Like she's there to help. So it's a very different experience and a really wonderful one.
I want to say, Sequoia, thank you so much for saying that. I had my baby in the UK, and I also had a midwife. And so I have one child, and I am actually very afraid of having another one here back in the US, because it's very difficult and to have the same experience as what you're describing it's not the norm here. And I just want to see you and hear you about midwifery being like so calming and gives you confidence and love that someone is protecting you and looking out for you, that has so much knowledge and can like tell you and has seen it all and can answer any questions when there is such a lack of information about women's bodies in medical literature, that midwives are actually like encyclopedic. And just thank you for pointing that out.
I would just like to add, and I've had these conversations with Ana Ibarra, I think she's here as well, but as we bring in more Indigenous voices and different cultures in, I think there's real opportunity to bring in, just understand that in many cultures, the women are the voices of knowledge, but the knowledge is rooted in the women. And I think it's just a very recent, or maybe more of a Western construct, that the women aren't the seat of so much knowledge. And for example, my husband is Okinawan, and Okinawans are an indigenous people of, my husband would never say he's Japanese, really. He would say he's Okinawan. So it's part of Japan, but it was its own kingdom of Ryukyu for many centuries. And they're mostly related to the indigenous Taiwanese and then Guamanians. His great grandmother was a healer and a seer, and had her hands tattooed. And that was a traditional cultural thing to do in Okinawa. But the tattooing part was rooted in the fact that Japanese would come to Okinawa and raid the women. They would raid them or just take them with them back to Japan's Japanese main islands. But the fact that that was her role, that she was, every village had their seer, healer woman, I think just really highlights that the opportunity as we expand more the diversity and inclusion track and more of the Indigenous speakers, that this conversation may change, that with these voices added.
Hope so. Thank you, Corinne.
I wanted to call out Kai in the chat, who said that her mother is a midwife or practicing midwife. You want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Ever since I'm little, that has been marking my entire womanhood or motherhood, for sure. An incredible influence, the stories or what we experience. And obviously when I wanted to give birth myself, I mean, that was such a fundamental influence. And my mother actually quit the profession. She was a liberal midwife in the early 50s. The first and youngest in Germany at that time, was responsibility for 2 lives. And she had to stand up against a lot of male doctors. Some of the older ones at some point would give her the space, but she decided to leave the profession in the 70s when birth became completely clinical in Germany, right? Every country has a different phase when they started doing that, and how much they sort of took over from that or away from this knowledge. Until today, it's still a battle in many places, because midwives still have to fight for how much responsibility they get And every now and then you have a wave of legislation which takes back or gives back. Or so the fight for birth houses in Europe has been quite extensive. Germany got them much earlier. So when I was giving birth, I was in France, and there was still no legal right to give home birth. You were not allowed legally to do so for insurance reasons. And so I was thinking about going back to Germany because of that. And I remember my midwife in the end, when I found her, because that was my biggest, longest journey, I had to find the person with whom I was going to give birth, right? She accepted me. She had already too many women in sevens, because she was thinking, if she doesn't take me in, I will give birth in the street, which wouldn't have been so bad either. Anyhow, so, and actually in the end she birthed both of my kids, both of my boys. And for the last one, it was at home. And the first one, she had lost her space, which was like a birthing house, which would have been the in-between space she created for women as a harbor. And that's really how it felt, right? Because going into a clinical space for birth is just downright wrong, right? And yes, so it's been a very, very strong impact on me. Doctors said to my mother at some point that when she asked him, and you're going to let I forgot whether it was the mother he let die and he saved the baby or something. She said, so are you playing God now? And he said, yes, I am. I mean, and that's like, you can still count the years, right? My mother is 75 now. And so it makes us wonder. And I remember, I have very great respect for a completely unknown French president who stepped down after just 1 year of being in office for personal reasons, to be with his family. But when in France they tried to further impede with new legislation on midwives, he stepped really up, and because his mom was a midwife too, and he really made a stand by saying, well, that's absolutely wrong to do so, no? Because there is knowledge. He acknowledged that there was knowledge, which is already something, but that's sort of the 90s, late 90s. So long stories, plenty of stories. I better stop now, because I mean, it's a very deep connection.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you for those stories. I mean, because also let's be very clear about the ways that histories and stories are transmitted and also muted.
True.
When women are the holders of oral histories. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your mother's story. Thelma has a hat.
Love it.
I always have the correct outfit.
Got some Brujas in the room. So I wanted to call out another couple guests who spoke up in the chat. So Nora, I actually am just highlighting you. I know you have a course that you sort of teach about this exact topic. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about, I don't know, specific ideas that maybe you learned when you were developing the syllabus, or conversations you've had with your students about this topic that stuck with you.
Yeah, so I think the closest thing to witches and midwifery that we talk about is the disparities we see in medical racism. And so it's a pretty dark topic that we talk about, and also how that ties into a lot of eugenics. And so we're talking, Corinne mentioned going back to indigenous.
No.
Hey, Nora, can you turn off your video?
Givers, or the people who are the forefront. Oh yeah. Am I frozen?
You were frozen. Your voice is frozen, so you turn off your video.
Is that better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Cool. So yes, so indigenous communities, I know like the Navajo or the Dene, as they call themselves, is a matriarchal society. There's also more than one gender in many different types of cultures that can also have that can also bear children. So that is also something that, of course, things, you said there's very little known about the woman's body. There's even less known about the trans man body, and what that's like for a trans man to give birth. And so what it's like for a trans man to give birth in a hospital versus what that's like for a trans man to give birth in a midwife situation is also very different. So you have these huge disparities based off of race, where you have all of this knowledge in gynecology being taken from slaves who are being experimented on without consent. And it's being used on white women, and it's using to save their babies. And Black women die at the highest rate of birth giving than any other race in the United States. And that is a direct result of the medical racism in our country. So yeah, I would be scared to give birth as a trans person in a hospital. So I think that's like also a big portion of what plays into at least United States politics, especially now with the Supreme Court and the elections coming up. It's very, very fraught. But yeah, that's some couple thoughts I had.
Thank you, Nora. And I think that really speaks to the point in the pamphlet that we highlighted, that not only are women valued in this space for their knowledge by the people who receive it, but usually they're the ones catering to those members of society that are not being serviced by the institutional, infrastructural media of healthcare and mental care seeking. So I want to ask, I know we've sort of talked a lot about the midwifery piece of it. I've seen at least one person in the chat. Is there anyone in the room who identifies as like witchy? Cool. You want to share a little bit?
I actually wanted to ask people. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go.
I'll go. Okay. So I'm slightly witchy. I like going. I like having moon circles. I have lots of family up in Oregon, and lots of women come together, and we have like for the full moon and for the sorry, my brain. But you know, we have our herbs, and it's just more of a gathering space to share your feelings and emotions. It's not like we're casting spells or anything.
I'll go next. Sorry. So I don't particularly follow any practice per se. I don't have any rituals. For me, it's more about kind of honoring my intuition when I practice different things. So it could be in my art, it could be in my research, it could be in cooking. So, and when I do that, I always get results that were unexpected, but much better in quality than it could have been or it would have been had I followed the instructions step by step. And if I hadn't listened to what I thought would be a good idea to practice or incorporate into what I do. So, and I wanted to ask you guys, when it comes to intuition and your practice, how much do you listen to it? Do you do that at all? Or is that a no-no when it comes to intuition and science?
And as we're collecting our thoughts, I want to piggyback on that and ask the men and everyone else in the room, because I feel like intuition gets this like gendered thing that like women have this mystical intuition. And if I were a man or identified as a man, I would feel pretty shitty about that. I mean, come on, we're all human beings here. Like we all have a little bit of intuition in us. Why can't we just lean into that?
And can I add something?
Yeah.
So intuition doesn't have to be necessarily an emotional function. So when it comes to cognitive functions, you can be an intuitive thinker, you know, so it doesn't always manifest as a feeling or this thing in your gut. It could be an inspiration, a thought. It could be an idea that you get when you're falling asleep or in the shower. So when I talk about intuition, like, think about it on this broad spectrum.
Intuition is such an interesting thing as an artist, because that's often used as an excuse to be a very like blah, blah, so, I just feel the movement, you know, kind of artist. And I think intuition is really a superior, complex, complicated way of processing information. And for artists, it's a very skill-based thing of thinking 5 or 6 different directions at one time, and then somehow being able to synthesize that and bring that forward into a new reality. So intuition itself, how we believe in that, I think really needs some work.
Cecilia, you were raising your hand. I saw you.
Yeah. Well, first, I am really happy for this meeting. When I saw this wine and witches in the program and see, well, I define myself as a techno-witch because I ritualize science. And this is really important for me, not only as an artist, but also as a Latin American, because for me, all these rituals are part of our identity. But the thing is, we live this like is something that is not so important. So big part of my work is ask these questions about related to how cold is science, or if the beliefs, they have their own methodologies. But for me, ritualistic things are part of our common life. But the thing is, we live this like as a guilty pleasure, as a guilty thing that we think is not developed. No, so because of that, I always were driven to develop these projects where I don't know things, but I want to do these things, but I don't know why. And always with this tool of science, with technology, and at the end, I understand that I know the things, but this is another way of understanding. So for me, it's really important, this spiritual thing. Now with the COVID, I felt this really strongly, this need to have this spirituality. And for me, it's a really common, and it's part of my life, no? So for example, in science, I was thinking if I need to pray to some God, but which one, no? Which God is for the pandemic, no? And I was thinking, because I belong to a family of scientists, we have a lab of electron microscopy. So I realized that this equipment is the terreiro that they said in the Brazilian beliefs, no? So yeah, for me, it's really important. This is something that is in the present, and something that is for me is a tool to decolonize, to fight against the patriarchy, no? Yeah. That's all.
Always a good note to end on, fight the patriarchy. So the chat has been going bananas. So first of all, I want to just acknowledge whatever time zone you're in, however late you've been staying up. I know a lot of you guys are running on like 30 hours of no sleep. Can we just acknowledge that, like, how many people around the world right now are like thinking at the same moment about witches of all things, and you know, breathing in the same moment. And just so, spirit is so good here. You guys are just the best. So if you need to sign off and go to sleep, or you know, go dance beneath the moon, we completely respect your choices and we understand. I'm gonna stay on. I think Alex is gonna stay on. There have been some really cool things coming up in the chat. So a lot of talk about feminine and masculine. Nels raised a point that got a lot of snaps, that men might be more, or you know, heteronormative men might be more likely to sort of jump to instinct rather than intuition. And why is that? been hearing from a lot of folks about witches and science. You know, is it like, are we embarrassed to say that we're spiritual beings coming from a scientific community? What does that mean for us? And I'm sure this tension must also exist for religious scientists who sort of subscribe to a more canon theology. So those are I'm just peppering through some things that happen. And if people want to pick up a thread, be my guest.
I also wanted to just add another topic to ruminate on, to like throw in.
Yeah.
I mean, at the heart of my research is community medicine and DIY medicine and DIY health interventions. That's really what I focus on. And something that I find extremely interesting is the history of peasant healers and mostly women who worked primarily in Europe in the Middle Ages up until the late 18th, 19th centuries, who were treating all manner of ills and pains in their communities. When people could not afford to hire a doctor, there was usually a wise woman or a medicine woman who had, come from an oral tradition, who was learned in local herbs and local treatments and could minister to people in her own community. And, when I read that in this book, I was like, oh man, women biohackers, like that's what that is. It's women taking what's available to them and doing community-based science. And so I just wanted to throw that out there too, that I was really moved by that, just sort of like nugget of history.
Can I add another book to your guys' book list?
Please.
You don't know it already? Women Who Won with Wolves.
Drop it in the Slack.
It's a good one. When I was starting to feel some of the anxiety of the babies coming, I liked looking to this book because it's like a lot of it's women's stories, so it's empowering.
I don't know if anyone can relate, I feel it's really interesting. When I was younger, I never realized there was a difference actually from being a woman to a man or whatever. And it wasn't until I got to my 30s and I got to like working that I started picking up on those things. And it was like, what? It actually make a difference? And I think in this conversation that the US and the election and things, I was just looking at social media and I saw these things like the vice president candidate kind of just told the president candidate Biden, was like, I'm speaking, let me speak. Like those kind of things. And I was like, whoa. And it's like all over the media. And it's so weird how we're, at least in my culture, Latin America and Colombia, that we used to like, okay, your brother has to get his food first. He's gonna eat more, and stuff like that. And you get used to it, and you get used to reacting to those type of situation in a certain way. And then when you realize that, and you start picking that up, it becomes like against you as well. Like, okay, you're gonna pick up on everything that we say, or you have to be so combative in a way. And I think it's really interesting how once you get to a certain age, that like a veil was taken off from me, because I could make a difference from what I was being brought up, even by my mom. And also like my mom is a single mom and she raised that, but there's always this thing about that you have to have a man in your life to like go forward, where you're gonna have to go forward. And it's like, you did it by yourself. Why are you thinking of a man that I need to have in order to do it? So just on that. And thank you for this space.
Thank you for helping us maintain it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heidi, for, your insights throughout this entire thing have been amazing. Like, and we talk about intuition and artists' intuition, like Heidi, you have it, in spades. Like, thank you so much for everything you've done to support this whole mission. And all the women organizers, for sure.
And to Abe's point, all of the humans who identify even a little bit with their feminine side, if we're calling it that.
Witchy side.
Yeah, your witchy side. We've all got it, right?
I think that's one thing I was just thinking of, and it just comes to me over and over again, is how sad I am on some level of this whole idea of the patriarchy that tries to keep men in this hyper masculine sense that they can't enjoy that side of themselves, and that they're really, missing out on some awesomeness that is a natural part of humanity because they're indoctrinated into these ideas that aren't flexible enough. And, it does them a disservice as much as it's doing us an even worse disservice. Because we all do have like this, whether you call it witchy side or feminist side or other side, or just being a more well-rounded human.
That's such a good point. It's not just that society kind of looks down on feminine qualities. It celebrates masculine qualities. And I see women, especially if you're striving to have a more position of power in whatever practice you have. I see women who tend to behave in a more masculine manner. Their voices kind of go lower. The way they dress becomes more masculine. And it's kind of sad that we subconsciously think that we need to kind of conform to a more masculine image and portray that to be valued and respected and seen as a capable person. Yeah, I try to, when I see, I catch myself doing that from time to time. And I try to consciously not do it. And I'm not always successful.
I just want to call out that we have a hand raised. So thank you, David, for your gentle introduction. Would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah. First off, I just want to say thank you all for hosting this. I'm so glad this is happening, number one. And number two, I love what you all are posing, and I apologize too, because I think I'm like, my brain is mush. But so like when I was, I was trained in grad school, like many of you were, in a very technical way. Like there's a certain way you do research, a certain way you kind of think about things. And obviously, being raised as a man, there's just this inherent patriarchal system that we're all in. So it's just like, the air that you breathe and the water you drink, whatever. It's just kind of like, you don't really develop consciousness about that until I think later on, if you're fortunate enough to be in environments and situations where people can help elevate and raise that consciousness, you can start understanding things are different. And for me, I think that wasn't really until probably like grad school. And so much of it was because of my community organizing experience, because like I worked at EMW, I was around people that were just way more conscious than I was a lot of these issues. So I had the good fortune, I think, of being able to soak in some of that energy, like in my 20s, like probably my mid 20s. But I was going to say, like, I'm not sure if there's like a genderedness to like intuition or kind of the feelings that you're describing, but like from my organizing experience, and this is very much also kind of BioSummit, like the reason BioSummit feels the way it feels is because for me personally, it goes back to my experience as a community organizer. And like BioSummit is like life science nerds combined with community organizing practice that I learned like in my 20s, which is all about genuine, authentic expression, holding space for each other, like making sure, all the stuff from the beginning, step up, step back, like brave space, that's kind of like the air that I was breathing when I was in my 20s. So, while I had this like technical training, my whole 30s has basically all been like completely leading with my heart, or whatever you want to call it. It's like completely like I've developed technical abilities to actually project manage, like BioSummit. There's a shitload of stuff that needs to get done. How do we structure it? Who needs to do what? Blah, blah, blah. And that's all like kind of a logical, technical training and thinking. But then there's like just a way of being, a way of like existing, where you are following like, whatever is moving you, and allowing, the universe, allowing spirit, allowing something sacred, allowing something to channel something inside of you. Like, when I'm like you know, what in the session that just happened, I had no prepared remarks. It's just like, I'm just feeling whatever you guys are feeling and we're just flowing together, you know? And this is also like years of like running an open mic. Like for 15 years, like I ran an open mic where it's just like, all you're doing is, the word that we used to use in our community was vibe. It's just, you're just vibing. All you're doing is and this is also a DJ thing too. Like I'm just, when I DJ, when I'm hosting like open mics, whatever, even with you all at BioSummit, I don't know exactly what's coming out of my mouth or what's happening. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now, to be totally honest. It's just completely extemporaneous, like whatever is flowing is flowing.
That's okay.
but it's just channeling like whatever it is, like emotion, spirit. You know, the labels aren't important, but I think you know what I'm saying. So anyways, I do think men oftentimes have hard times like accessing that dimension. And, you know, and I think it's a constant process to try to like get closer and closer to the source, the universe, God, whatever it is. But anyways, I just know for myself in my journey that that's like something that now is like the forefront, like the technical things, like it's like the forefront is like, how do you develop intuition and tune in even more precisely into like whatever is calling and manifesting inside. So anyways, sorry for the ramble.
Thanks, David. Do you have any thoughts about witches?
Well, it's connected to witches. All of this is connected to witches. So
keeping it real, Alex.
I have, so I have to give shout outs to my psychotherapist, Ellen, who is not here, but I'm very excited for our session on Thursday. She is like a hardcore psychic. Like she literally is a psychic. She can put out fires with her mind. Like she is a hardcore psychic. Like when I work with her, what we're doing is like doing deep navigation of subconscious, which is all connected to generational trauma, which is all connected to, you know, in my case, like fun fact about Congo, I'm a direct descendant of Confucius. So I actually know like my exact lineage, what generation I'm descendant, 75th generation, it's a whole thing. But there is insane generational trauma that goes back to my own personal heritage. In the US where we are, just our civilization is just the amount of like energetic baggage that comes from slavery, you know, colonialism, all the shit. And like, we need to access the witching dimension to like access all of that stuff. Like, how the fuck are we going to heal from all of this stuff? So this is sort of like, you know, like BioSummit, I think gets at it in aspects, but this is like, for me, at least right now, is like kind of where I'm at is the witching dimension. It's like, how do we access like the sacred, those other elements that are not part of our standard, like kind of sensing. And I apologize if I'm using witching in not the right terminology, but this is how I'm interpreting it as I'm saying it.
Really love the points that are coming up. Heidi, you want to go ahead and jump in here?
Yes, I want to just connect some stuff that I wasn't too much into, like music, like electronic music and stuff like that. But when I had one experience that was really good, I felt like a DJ was a energy bender. And I really liked Aang from Avatar, that he's like the wind bender. And I think witches are also energy benders. And I think liturgy is energy bending. And I think that's what happened here. Like, you're bending the energy of everybody just to work towards the objective. And I think that's a craft. And it's a craft that is built by intuition and instinct, as Nels was saying. So I would say energy benders, witches and stuff.
Yeah, I love that too. Thank you, Heidi. That's great. Thank you.
I also love the point about trauma. I don't want to hover on it too long because I know we all have different connection points to that word and that experience, but I don't know. I have a personal conviction that, you know, trauma is one of those things that really brings you closer to your own belief system and your own understanding of whatever is out there and whatever is in here, and all of that kind of comes out or gets shunted away when we are experiencing or coping with trauma. And I always wonder how much trauma is being inflicted by these artificial categories that we're all imposing on ourselves. And I also wonder how much it's a result of longstanding, you mentioned generational trauma. There's also, you know, just the trauma of suppressing elements of your identity because society told you to. But wait, I see Carolyn's hand and I don't want to step on your words. So go ahead, Carolyn.
Hey, thank you, Amanda. So appreciate all that you've done for BioSummit this year. It's really been terrific.
Likewise.
And Carolyn, oh my God, thanks.
I want to bring up an issue that I've always had, and it's basically doing a huge shout out to Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier. And
Women in science.
so moved by that. And this has always been a little bit of a thorn in my side with this conference with George Church. And not that I don't absolutely love George Church, but this has always been a huge issue for me since I became involved in bioart and interested in CRISPR. And so I'm just thrilled that there is this recognition on a really high official level for her and for both of them and their work. So I wanted to mention that. The second one I wanted to mention was, I always look at what other women have done strategy-wise, particularly people who have been leaders in their field. And it's very, very interesting what Ruth Bader Ginsburg did. When she was trying to advocate for change, she was strategic as hell. The first thing she changed was paternity leave for men. That's the direction she went, under the premise that until we're all equal, until men are free to be nurturers, there is no equalness in our society. And so that kind of idea of strategicness in how we look for equality in terms of allowing men to have the intuitive or feminine side, but that not taking the place of, the need to recognize the nurturance and the value that's bottom line that this world needs from women. But so these strategies, I think is so important for where we are right now.
Thelma, I see your hands raised. Do you want to just unmute yourself and go ahead?
Yay, yeah. Going back a little about stereotypes, something that has recently in the last 5 years, I've been shocking and struggling with the fact that sometimes I really feel that everyone is thinking more in material things than in spiritual things. And I found this because, for example, I had a startup, and when I went to a round of investments with business people, they always looked at me and said, why are you wearing a hoodie and jeans? You're in a special place. You really have to have high heels and a dress or something. And I was like, it really doesn't matter how I look. It matters my idea and my entrepreneurship and all that. And then everyone always criticized the fact that how you wear your clothes. And it's not like I like other kind of clothes. It's just I want to be comfortable. But people are really, really concerned about how they look and all the things they have, their cars and their phones and all that. And I don't know if it's only an issue in Latin America, because sometimes I have stopped people and say okay, now make an exercise about using the verb want and the verb need. Do you want this thing or do you need it? And most of them say no, I really need an iPhone. I really need the most recent iPhone. And it's no, it's really that you want it. And that's really hard because some people really think they need things to be happy. And it's no, you don't. And yeah, it's crazy. And sometimes, what was another thing? Oh yeah, I think you raise kids, making them believe that they have to get a really good job and to have a lot of things, but you don't really say okay, tell me, how do you feel? Most people don't even can describe how they feel. So, and when you talk about meditation or yoga even, they say no, that those are hippie things. So really we need to connect with people and with ourselves. So yeah, that's how I feel it. We really care about how we look and what we have and know what we really feel.
Thank you, Thelma. I think you're bringing up something that, by the way, just so you know, is not unique to Latin America. I mean, I always feel pressure to dress up, even when there's nothing going on, but it's silly because I look around and I look at even my husband, he's in tech also. He wears hoodies. He wears whatever the fuck he wants, that is 100% not unique to Latin America. That is a patriarchal clothing norm that just affects all of us, and it's insane. So thank you for bringing that up.
Speaking of clothing norm, I forgot to tell you guys about the sweatshirt that I'm wearing currently. In addition to being witchy, I thought you guys would like this. It's about nocturnal pollinators and how we should help our nocturnal pollinator bat friends.
I love that. I also wanted to just point out the other thing that Thelma said that stuck out to me, that maybe someone else has some thoughts on this too. She was talking about sort of like the spiritual over the consumerist, not just that the consumerist is like a negative, which I think, you know, it is. And, you know, corporations are bad. And we've had a lot of talks about capitalism and imperialism over the course of the weekend. So I don't think we need to belabor that. But the spiritual part of what you said really hit with me, that that you feel like, and let me know if this is like paraphrasing you incorrectly, but that, you know, there isn't as much value on the spiritual as much as there is on the like consumerist or material that people are interested in. And I also feel that. And you know, I'm Jewish, and so I'm a practicing Jewish person, and I like, you know, take off for Jewish holidays, as you know, David can attest, to be like, don't talk to me, it's Yom Kippur. Like, you know, and I'm very serious about it. And I was raised Jewish, and as the pandemic has gone on, I've become much more serious about learning sort of like from the ancient wisdom of that culture, and especially the women. And it's been something that I've been digging into while I've been at home with nothing to do. And I was just wondering if anyone else also felt like that spirituality is sort of a key part of their life, or if they had any other thoughts on that or reflections.
You guys don't have to raise your hands. You can just start talking.
Shout it out. There are so many people here. People and at least 37 opinions, because I have 5 of them.
I see. Is Eric trying to interject here? Or sorry, Andy EC?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to pick up what Thelma was speaking about. Gender expression is a thing for gender non-conforming and non-binary people. For example, they expect me to look androgynous, but if I look androgynous in academia or in corporate spaces, I won't get funded, I won't get clients, I won't get money at the end of the month. So I have to keep a masculine gender expression because they expect me to look like that. And I use that to my advantage because I can, but I don't want to. And I think we should start speaking about also how science was used as a colonial for colonialism and to set the binary. Okay, it was used to make us think that there is binary. For example, when Caroline was talking about indigenous people, for example, indigenous people, the binary to indigenous people came with science and with the colonies. So we should not be translating what we think for our culture to their cultures. Okay, so nothing.
And I can jump in also, and I identify as gender non-conforming. And I've also never been able to feel comfortable coming out to any of the labs I've worked in, just because, like, you know, it's so difficult to understand, like, whether or not you're in a relatively progressive lab environment. It's very difficult to assess whether or not that's going to have an effect on the way that you relate to your coworkers. And on that note, that was something I was sort of earlier in the conversation that came to mind, is this relationship to confidence in the sciences, regardless of any sense of sort of shared sense of understanding in the lab. And finding that to be the sort of the norm is that, like, regardless of how informed an opinion is, there's this sort of overt sense of masculinity and confidence sort of taking precedent over taking a measured approach or stepping back or finding space to sort of deliberate on any sort of issue. And then another point I think that's been like super, I guess, on top to me is like the idea of care and practicing care in these sorts of spaces, and the way that care is sort of subtracted and diminished in spaces by not only like white supremacy culture, but patriarchy, et cetera. And something I think is like super special about this environment is just how much care is practiced in these spaces, and how special that is, and how rare it feels to be able to come into a space in the sciences and to feel like, you know, there's a sense of like strong self.
Anders, do you go by Anders? I don't think we've
Yeah,
interacted.
yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure I'm calling you by the right name. So thank
Yeah.
you, Anders. Thank you so much for that reflection. I think you're totally right, and I love everything that you said. So thank you.
All right, we're approaching the 1 hour mark, so
Oh no.
I know it flew by. I mean, there's no time limit on enjoying the space that we're holding, so you know we can stay on for a little longer. But while we're holding this space, does anyone else want to go ahead and speak their truth a little bit?
Maybe I just want to add that at some point I also feel scared about, as Andy said, in the binary, that we move to the opposite side. I mean, like, if we didn't think about diversity, for example, like we are going to about women in science, but just women as panelists, because just women can understand what women feels. But I think that, or just for me, like the diversity quotes, like include this guy because he is LGBT community, or just because he's woman, just invite her because we have to say that we are diverse. And I think that we cannot put labels of attitudes, because it's the same that it's not working at all. I mean, I work in a university that is mostly an engineering one, and there are a lot of guys. It's mostly, I mean, for example, in some civil engineering, it's like one girl in 20 males classroom. But it's hard just to say that, okay, girl, you're doing well and you're the best because you are doing this. Because I think that it's also segregate again and create like, yeah, like we are not doing in the well. Like positive discrimination is also really bad, because if we want something to change, is like include like in a further perspectives that we need everyone in. I mean, we need also parents to care child. We need also women to care their child, like no tax or no politics, because I think that in our countries, because where this is a theme, we are like going through the opposite way. No, I mean, like for example, with this virtual environment, like if they didn't see that there are women in the discussions, okay, sometimes it's really evident that there are kind of patriarchal or masculine bias, but sometimes it is not. So it's like we doesn't have to be careful that not use too much that excuse of gender bias or any kind of inclusion bias that is even dangerous about it.
Everyone's in awe of the thought.
Yeah. Natalia, I don't know whether I understand you right, but what I've learned, because for me all these issues were only very recently that they really became important, and I never ever felt this important to draw on the gender difference. But what I feel is, and we now need to really, because it's so systemic, I really think we cannot escape any of this anymore. We really have to accept that we need to use those measures because we thought, we were better than we were, right? And that our systems would function better than they were. And the reality is that we're still so far behind that when my kids bring up these questions and say, is it not unfair? I say, well, there is nothing about fairness in this anymore, right? It's about doing something which ensures that we somehow tackle it at a systemic level, which we are very far from because we don't even know how to handle systemic issues right? So I'm trying to tell my kids, this is something we just need to do. Look at what's happening. Look how bad it still is. None of us would still have thought that it was still an issue like that, but it just hits us in the face from every side for everyone. And so I just try to say, well, we would wish that it would work like that. It doesn't. So even I have to say in the end, well, whatever we do, it's all right, because it has to be visible and there has to be a measure done politically or anything. Whatever we do, for me right now, I say, is something at least which works, moves us forward.
I just like to add to what Kai was saying, and also picking up on Natalia's comment that at least this sparks the conversation, because before we wouldn't question that. Before we wouldn't question that all male panel. Now we're questioning it, and then we're putting the people there to visualize, because like my boyfriend works in video, and they're always like thinking about these panels and stuff. And sometimes the comments are, whoa, but maybe there are not so many women that are good at doing this thing or that thing. And it's like, no, maybe you're not looking hard enough where they are. And maybe they haven't had the chance to be exposed to what all the men have been exposed in order to be on that panel. And you have to have the space to be able to showcase what you can do in order to start being there. It's not that they're not capable, it's just they're not there enough. So just having this conversation, it's great. And I think Argentina is a great example, like an amazing woman movement that is going on here, that is just bringing those discussions forward. And maybe it's not the right way, but is there a right way to do it? It's not the right way as it has been done for so many years. So just getting the conversation out there. And also for me in Bio Summit, just it's like looking up. Today on the communications panel, there are 3 women that were doing amazing work. And for me, it was like, this is something that is possible. I can relate to this, and that's amazing. And that empowers other people coming behind us.
Thank you, Heidi.
Alex was one of those folks, if you haven't gotten to the recording section of your FOMO experience.
Thank you.
The energy on that panel.
Look, that means a lot. Look, I missed the last probably 2 speakers, and I don't want to jump in. I'm sorry, but I feel like we're still on the same thread we were on when we left. But I just want to echo what Heidi said about sort of like throwing the ladder down behind you, which is, like if we're going to break the glass ceiling, that means we need like an army of women climbing a ladder with hammers. And, every step you take, you throw 2 down behind you so that more people can come up. And, I was also raised by a single mom who worked all the time. Someone else mentioned that. And that's what she taught me. And I really take it to heart. And I've been in, startups and in tech for a long time. And I have witnessed women who take 2 steps up and they don't put them back down. And they don't help other women. And that makes me really sad. And I think, there is still this barrier that exists. And so our job is to continue to throw the steps down, all of them, build ladders, build stairs for more women to come up behind us, no matter what we're doing. I think that's so important.
right?
Right.
And non-binary, non-conforming, and like all of the
It's for everyone. Everyone who wants to break the ceiling. Anyone who wants to break the ceiling.
There are ceilings for all of us, and they should all go fuck off.
Yes.
If you don't mind, can I quote something which really, really fascinated me? And I don't know whether any of you know anything about Nilofer Merchant. And I found it was one of the most fantastic things I read. My mom actually, when she left midwifery, became a pioneer. And she was my husband, my father, and I was a woman in tech as well. Anyhow, that's just besides here. Nilofer is a Silicon Valley tech woman with Black origin, so I have no idea how to put this right, sorry. And she just quoted, and I have to find what she wrote again. She quoted what Marilyn Monroe had done at some point, and I forgot the biggest venue where she would always be welcome, and where she had the stage. And she, at some point, made a deal with the owner of that whatever club it was, to let Aretha Franklin play. And she said, and he said, I can't let her play, I won't let her play. And she said, well, you let her, you put her on the stage and I'll be in the audience every evening to pull the crowd. So that's what we're talking about, right? And that's what I think this type of championing doesn't matter whether you do it for a woman or for anybody else. It's whether it's a male champion. That's what we need to do. And it's this action or this process. I'd like to say, I want this type of environment.
Yeah, actually, I agree with that. I think at this point, because it's not the norm for women or for non-binary people or for people of different races to be prominent on a panel or in any organization, if we want to have this paradigm shift, at first we need to consciously make space for it until it becomes normal. And then when it becomes normal and becomes visible, then we no longer need to put in the same amount of effort. So yeah, I don't see any problem with that. I think it's amazing that we're doing this.
Question posed in the chat. If we're thinking of this metaphor of glass ceiling, like how hard do we want to keep climbing? Oh wait, actually, Andy, I'm just going to ask you to go ahead and unmute yourself and articulate your thought a little bit because I'm curious.
Sometimes when I talk with other feminists in science, what we always keep looking for the places where hetero white men are, but and our access to that places. But what we start questioning ourselves is, do we want to be there, or we want to build another thing? We want to make other institutions. We want to make another structure of relationship, and where we can be together, we can share together in another logic. Because sometimes it's that the structure and the ceiling, it devours you, and in some times in the future you became what you hated. You started fighting so hard to access there that when you get there, you start making the same things that you hated in some way or another. So I think more like, well, let's grab the hammers, let's tear apart the building and build another thing with our rules and norms and what we want with everyone. That's what I was trying to say.
Thank you, Andy. I think that was what I'm trying to say, but you will do it better, because I mean, I'm not disagree with that idea to visualize the differences, but I'm afraid that if we do it in the same way, we just make up the same building with different people inside, but it's the same problem.
Amazing.
Isis had her hand up for a while, and I want to hear from her as well. Thank you, Andy, so much. That was really powerful.
Well, it was something that was circling back. I don't know if it's relevant anymore, but two things that were said a little before that resonate to me is that first, that it's what you said, Alex, that are some women sometimes take 2 steps up and they never go back, and they don't give back, you know, because even when we do have space, we didn't have space, you know, it's not all by ourselves, we need others to get there too. And that's something that I really try to do, is to give back in every step, like a little bit further that I go, I give back. Like, as some might have been following some participations, but I shared that I am the co-founder of this company called Fortunos. And the company has been growing. We have the company in 3 different countries. And this year we have 3 different subsidiaries in Brazil itself. We divided the company and we started to hire more people. And the last 2 people that we hired, like I preferably hired women, and I hired 2 women, and not because they are women, but because they are capable, but given the opportunity, and both of them are equally capable, have the equal, you know, same qualifications, I rather give back and give the opportunity to a woman. And one of them is an intern that I even brought to the Bio Summit to say apply, and she was here the whole time. Diane Borilli is our intern at Fortunos. So I think it's important to, you know, if you go 2 steps up, always go 1 step back too, and have that in mind all the time.
Amazing, Isis.
So proud of your company, Isis. I've been, you know, we've known each other for a few years now on the internet, and I'm just so proud of you. Thank you for sharing that.
Proud of all of you. As I said several times, like every time I get more humble if I come back, because every time that I come back to the Bio Summit, I meet more incredible people. It's amazing.
Same.
All right, well, it seems like we all have a lot of reflecting to do now. I want to just take another moment. We've said it before, but I'm just so, I know Alex and I are just so grateful that you guys, you know.
I'm literally crying. Like.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that we were able to submit this as a real event that was taken seriously at a scientific conference, that there was, you know, over 40 people in this room talking about the things that matter to us and what makes us human. Thank you guys so much for just being, oh yeah, good question, David. Yeah, we'll put this in the proceedings.
Yes.
Yeah, this really happened.
We just kind of snuck this in also. We didn't ask permission, so thank you. Letting that.
Yes. Coming clean. Bioprofessional. But listen, bio witches, bio pirates.
Special thanks to Nels, because actually this was his idea, if you recall.
Yeah, that's actually true, Nels. You've been pretty quiet over there, but you were the one who was like, you guys should do this at the event.
Yeah, Nels was like, I want to hear that talk. I want to go to that. So thank you, Nels.
All right, well, I don't know about you guys, but I've got a couple rituals to go perform. Gotta go bathe in the moonlight and stargaze and reflect.
The end of Bio Summit on this amazing note. Oh my God.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, everyone who was here, who shared reflections, who, you know, is doing amazing work and is powerful in whatever you're doing. Like, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your heart and talking with us and your reflections and just being here all weekend with us. Like, God, what an amazing Bio Summit. Thank you.
You guys inspire us.
Yeah, really.
Love you guys.
Thank you
for
working so hard.
Family photo. Family photo of witches and wine.
Yes. Okay, smile. Okay, wait, next page. Okay, smile. Okay, I got it. Okay, thanks.
Guys, this cookie is so bad. Don't make lemon Halloween cookies.
Don't do it. That sounds just a little bit like.
Don't recommend.
No, I can't.
Thanks for holding space for us, y'all.
Thank you, Amanda, for being my partner this whole few months. I love you so much, man. I'm so sorry I can't just like hug you.
I know. But we're gonna have another wine catch up in like the next 2 weeks, I think.
If I don't see you this week, I'm gonna be like, what is my life?
It's gonna be a legitimate withdrawal.
I know. All right, I'll talk to you guys all soon. I'm gonna go off. Bye.
Bye everyone.